It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com. Or you can just email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. And if you like our show today, be sure and check out our new Patreon. All the shows in the member section are now up in Patreon. Not all of them, but I'm uploading them all there to Patreon. And also, too, the shows that we normally would do on Saturday nights are also in Patreon now. Our archives are always free. Go to Spreaker.com, and you can find our guests there. We've done many, many shows. I guess about 6 or 7 shows with Ted Rubenstein, who is a legend in the field of JFK research, assassination research, organized crime research. He's worked with Larry Flynt Publications, Mae Brussels, and Dave Emory. And he's also helped me a lot, too. He's a guy I go to when I need advice or some help or locate a guest for me and stuff like that. He's always been a great help to this show. Ted Rubenstein, are you there?
Oh, thanks for the generous introduction, and hello to you and your audience.
Wait, didn't you just write that introduction? Thank you so much. Ted.
Oh, you had to give it away, didn't you?
Yeah, so what's on your mind these days, Ted? What do you got going?
Well, I thought maybe today we'd talk about Johnny Roselli.
Okay, Johnny Roselli. Now, I know the name, right? Johnny Roselli is an organized crime figure back in the 60s and 70s, I guess, right?
Yes.
So tell us, who was...
demise in the 70s.
Yeah, 76 it looks like, yeah. And now, it says he disappeared. Oh, I don't know where it is. So who was Johnny Roselli, and why should we care?
Yes. Well, mainly we should care because his name figures prominently in JFK assassination research, either as somebody who's exposing one scenario of it or alternatively concealing his own role in the assassination. Take your pick. But he made his bones, so to speak, in the 20s under Al Capone and Tony Accardo and so on. But he first was charged with selling narcotics he came to this country with his immigrant parents, and he was not born in this country. And I think at 17, he was busted for selling narcotics to an undercover agent, and he went on the lam and changed his name. He was in New York at the time, and he fled to Chicago. And the guy who was going to testify against him in that narcotics case was not the cop, but I think the witness who was going to testify who was found murdered. And anyway, he changed his name from Felipe Sacco to Johnny Roselli. And he became, up-and-comer in the Chicago mob. And they decided to place him on the West Coast in Los Angeles to safeguard their interests in the budding movie industry, and also possibly with the racing wire services and bookmaking. But anyway, he was involved in the 40s with a far-reaching extortion plot that built a lot of Hollywood stars, and a bunch of organized crime figures were convicted, and he was one of them. And the key witness in that case, a guy named Willie Beoff, was later blown up in his car, I think in Arizona in the 50s. So he served time behind that. He also was implicated in the Friars Club cheating scandal. That was a card club that operated in L.A., and they had some hidden cameras, and they were, reading people's cards and then passing it on to the inside players. And it got busted, and he went down on that rap. He also was implicated in. He was also in. They also, after being in L.A., the mob decided to move him to Las Vegas, where he apparently oversaw the mob's interest in the casinos there, particularly the skimming. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, yeah.
Okay, and he was implicated in hidden ownership of the, I forget which casino it was. Might have been the Flamingo. But anyway, he got a grant of immunity for that, and he testified in that case. And there were no repercussions from that.
Well, that's interesting, because normally you hear these stories that the omerta, like the code of silence. But he was a made guy, but he got immunity and testified against his co-defendants and still went on to continue in organized crime?
In that one case.
Yeah.
Now, in the 60s, in 1967 to be specific, he was in trouble with the government, and he was facing deportation when they found out he had changed his name, and he wasn't legal to stay in the country with the narcotics charge, which he was convicted of in absentia, I believe. So they were going to deport him, and he was looking to use any leverage he could against the government. So he had his lawyer leak a story to Jack Anderson about what seemed like a fantastic story at the time, which was that the CIA had gotten in bed with the mafia, specifically to devise ways to kill him. And the CIA would be happy, and the mob could get their casino interests and also the narcotics route back through Cuba. And according to Roselli, the CIA contracted with Robert Mayhew, a name I know you know, to be the go-between to Johnny Roselli, and then Roselli would go to Giancana, who they were calling Sam Gold in this plot. Now, Giancana didn't have the contacts in Cuba that another famous organized crime figure that figures in this prominently did, who's Santo Trafficante, who had all these contacts in Cuba. And so it came out that, and was confirmed that Roselli's story was true.
Well, not only that, but if you listen to the interviews I did with Jim Hunt, the nephew of Frank Sturgis, Frank Fiorini, he talks about Sturgis, the Watergate burglar and alleged JFK shooter, that he was friends with Trafficante and Johnny Roselli and Giancana.
I don't know about Giancana, but
possibly not.
I think he was connected to. I know he knew Trafficante, and I believe he probably knew Roselli, because Roselli was working at the San Souci casino in Havana, and Sturgis, for a while, was the head of the casinos under Castro in the brief period before Castro closed down the casinos and jailed Trafficante at the time.
All right.
So that part before. So what you said is accurate. Now, this is 1967 that the story that Jack Anderson ran this story, which didn't identify Roselli as a source. I believe it identified Edward. It might have identified Edward Morgan, the lawyer, but I'm not sure. But anyway, this was the same time that Garrison was undertaking his JFK assassination investigation, first intending to go after David Ferry, who died mysteriously, and a week later, Garrison charged Clay Shaw instead with conspiracy to assassinate the President of the United States. Now, it's believed that Jack Anderson may have published this story to muddy the waters and to take Garrison down a false trail. But why would a false trail that implicated the mafia? Roselli also said that one of these teams that went down to kill Castro was turned around by Fidel, and that hit team came back and killed Kennedy.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
At some point in time, they changed their target and killed Kennedy.
Yeah, what do you make of that? And there was a lot of that flipping around because, like you said, Sturgis was supporting Castro at first, and he flipped around and became anti-Castro. And so there was a lot of flipping back and forth. Well, what do you make of that story about the hit team going down?
I do think the part of the mystery of the Kennedy assassination is wrapped up in the CIA mafia plots to kill Castro, and you can argue how much the Kennedy brothers knew about those plots. But at any rate, I would argue that they were involved with these elements to some extent. They went way over their heads, and whatever they intended to do about Cuba backfired against JFK.
You know, I always suspected, too, that when you hear about this Bay of Pigs invasion and how they were supposed to get certain air support and water support that they didn't get. I always suspected that was the CIA going rogue along with their organized crime buddies trying to get the casinos back. And that's why Kennedy says, I don't know what's going on here, but I'll take responsibility for it. And but I'm going to break up the CIA because they're out of control.
Well, it's so complicated. I mean, Kennedy assumed blame for the failure of the operation, but privately he blamed the CIA. And, of course, there was a lengthy investigation by the CIA, which he blamed in various places. It seems for sure that the CIA misled Kennedy by saying that U.S. air power wouldn't be needed past a certain first airstrike. There was some planes used that had no markings but they weren't going to use. Kennedy was insistent that no U.S. military forces be used so that they could have some measure of plausible deniability. So Kennedy was not going to approve what he would need to approve in order for the invasion to have succeeded. So that's why the exiles blamed Kennedy for the Cubans dying on the beaches in considerable number.
Well,
but
Ted,
there are some people that believe that they were just trying to force Kennedy's hand, and that even though he said he wasn't going to commit air support, that he would have no choice but to do that in order to make the invasion succeed. But he refused to do it, and then so he caught hell for it.
Now, and by the way, that does seem to be true. Because what's his name? Jim Rothstein was part of the Bay of Pigs invasion, and he hated the left for the rest of his life. He became extremely right wing because he felt he was betrayed in the Bay of Pigs invasion. But the thing is, now
you hear it a lot among that community. Yeah.
Now the thing is back this thing about sending assassins down and then being flipped and coming back. That's similar to the Marita Lorenz story, right?
How so? She just says that a bunch of friends, Sturgis and a bunch of his pals, like the Novo brothers and so on, went from Miami to Dallas to kill Kennedy. She didn't say anything about being turned around by Castro.
But wasn't her story that she was sent out to kill Castro, but became involved with Castro romantically?
She did do that. She was given cold pills to give to him, and she chickened out, and she didn't use them. And Castro knew full well she didn't have the heart to do it. And then Castro apparently handed his pistol over to her and said, "Look, you want to shoot me? Shoot me." But she said, "Oh yeah, you know I can't," or something. What
a wild time in history, you know? All these characters running around, gambling, the casinos, drug running. Sturgis had his own B-25 bomber plane jet in a hangar down there in Florida. Just doing stuff, man, like just no accountability. And I was even looking at, too, when you were talking about this with the Friars Club, it was Frank Sinatra who sponsored Roselli to get into the Friars Club there.
Absolutely. I just read that today myself. Now, that fire club thing is interesting because Sirhan's lawyer was involved in that. Sirhan's lawyer was defending Roselli, and the lawyer was in possession of like a grand jury transcript he wasn't supposed to have, and then they were going to prosecute him. And the theory is that he threw the case against Sirhan in return for them not prosecuting him for having this transcript in the Roselli Fires Club case, which is really interesting. But anyway, so what happened to these guys that were implicated in the CIA mafia plots to kill Castro and the associated apparent plot that was successful to kill Kennedy? Well, it was all being reinvestigated in the 70s with the Church Committee, which was investigating CIA wrongdoing. You also had the Rockefeller and the Pike Committee, but we'll put them aside. After the Church Committee, you had the Schweiker-Hart Subcommittee, which looked into the shortcomings of the Warren Commission and how there was a cover-up by both the CIA and the FBI. So that was all falling apart. And then that was followed by the House Assassination Committee, which ruled that there probably was a conspiracy. So this was going all on in the mid-'70s, and Giancana testified before Giancana was going to testify before the Church Committee, but he was shot in his basement while making sausages and making a late-night snack.
I heard there was a militant vegan hit.
What?
I heard there was a militant vegan hit, no?
And then a year later, I should say that one of the things Roselli said was that these Cubans who turned around and then killed Kennedy, they were recruited from the pool of Cubans that Trafficante knew in Cuba. So right there, Trafficante had good reason to want Roselli dead and to be fully resolved that he was talking out of school and something need to be done about it. And I think the rest of the underworld was starting to go along with that view, because the one book I was looking at recently was really, which is called Godson, Willie Fapiano and John Harney. Now, he apparently knew Lansky and Roselli pretty well. And Roselli basically told the same story to this guy, and it seemed, from what this guy surmised, that he was getting it from Giancana. But anyway, the point is made in this book that the other guys in the underworld were very suspicious of Roselli and the fact that Roselli had a loose mouth. And they warned this Fapiano, just don't trust this guy too much. Be careful what you say around him. He's not the type of guy you can trust. And he heard that from Lansky, and he heard that from a couple of other high-up organized crime figures that he was in contact with. So Roselli apparently was not a guy that he was used to a great extent, but was not fully trusted, and for good reason, we know now. So anyway, Roselli himself, the following year, August 1976, he's still apparently on speaking terms, or he's still associating with Santo Trafficante.
Wait, can I throw something in here? Because it seems that it talks about it in 75, after Giancana got murdered, right?
Right. Yes.
That Roselli left Los Angeles and Vegas for Miami, Florida. Now that way, and just like you're saying, if the organized crime guys were questioning him, he would seek safety amongst CIA anti-Castro Cubans in the Florida community, which would be logical that he went to them for safety, to protection. Possibly
it's their territory, but it's also Trafficante's territory.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So he can be trying to assure Trafficante that he's still loyal. He's not going to implicate him any more than it's already gotten out, which was getting out anyway. I mean, Roselli was not the only source for this information. I mean, the Church Committee corroborated it through the CIA itself. I mean, they basically couldn't deny it. So anyway, he was still associated. So Roselli was still associating with Trafficante in 1976, and he met with him for dinner. And then a couple of days later, he had a golf outing, and he never came back. And then a couple of weeks later, his body was discovered in Dumbfoundling Bay, South Florida, stuffed into an oil drum. And one account says that he was found with his testicles and penis stuffed into his mouth, which happens in certain organized crime hits, but it suggests that the person was sleeping with somebody that he shouldn't have. That kind of offense. And even though Roselli was a hell of a ladies' man, no one ever suggested that he was sleeping with somebody he shouldn't have that I know of. So if that detail is true, it's a little curious. Now, have you had Gene Carmen's son on your show?
I don't think so. Who is Gene Carmen's son?
Gene Carmen was supposedly a good friend of Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, I tried to get them, yeah.
And he tells this story with a lot of detail about learning from his mother, that his mother had learned from Roselli, that Roselli himself had hit Giancana. Which, I've had a couple of discussions with Guy, and I didn't really want to argue with him too much, but I made it quite clear that this is totally disputed by almost every other account of what happened to Giancana. Because the two leading suspects by far are his driver and bodyguard, Butch Blasi, and the gun was recovered not far from where Blasi lived in relation to Giancana's house. Alternatively, Tony Spilotro has been named as the most likely shooter of Giancana. But at any rate,
really?
No one really suggested that Roselli was still a hitman, if he ever was one, in his elder when he was like 70 years old. It's absolutely absurd, actually, if you think about it. That 70 years old, it's not totally absurd, but I don't think he was ever placed in Chicago at the time. And I just think it wouldn't, all these other people wouldn't be saying what they're saying about Blasi and Spilotro if there wasn't a lot of evidence for it and precious little evidence that Roselli would have done it.
Well, we just lost Frank Collada, so that one goes to his, that story goes to the grave with him.
Yeah, we did. I felt kind of sad about that.
He was a nice guy, believe it or not. And everybody knew him. Everybody in Vegas knew him. Everywhere. After my first interview, the next day, we had a banquet with Victoria's basketball team, and one of the parents was an FBI agent, and she knew him. And then I did the sheriff's debate. I moderated the sheriff's debate, and everyone there knew me. Everybody knew him. So he knew everybody in Vegas. He's a fascinating character.
Yeah, he did. Now, have you had Tosh Plumlee on your show?
No, I haven't. No, and he seems a very the way he has to do an interview from his car on a phone or something like that at a certain time. You familiar with that situation?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, it's
but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But anyway,
what's his involvement?
He claims to have seen Roselli in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 63, that Plumlee was part of an abort mission that was going to stop the plot, and that Roselli was performing the same function, but that somehow whatever they thought was going to go down, a fake plot or a plot that they would be able to stop, rather, they weren't able to stop it, and it went down as the assassins planned. And so that's one of the people that claims that Roselli was in Dealey Plaza. But there's more, because when Bill Bonanno's book came out called Bound by Honor, he related the story that he was in prison with Roselli, and that Roselli told him that, yes, he was in Dealey Plaza, and more than that he shot JFK from the storm drain.
I've heard that storm drain
It's
story
believed that Roselli
before.
was not even in. The best evidence I've heard suggests that, in fact, Roselli was in Las Vegas, and was woken up by news that Kennedy had been killed. To my knowledge, Roselli never implicated himself in the assassination. But he did tell those other things about the plots and about the so-called turnaround plot that backfired, that Fidel turned around against Kennedy. But he never implicated himself as being on the scene. Now, I was going to say, Tosh Plumlee, in the wake of the discovery of Roselli's body, he was one of those questioned by the FBI to see what he knew about it. Whether he could help them in their investigation at all, which he couldn't. Now, they also questioned a lot of these anti-Castro Cubans that they knew Roselli knew. And that didn't really pan out. It is believed that Trafficante ordered the Roselli hit. Now, I've heard one possible name thrown out as the hitman, but someone else who's written 2 books on Trafficante claims that the guy that Sam Cagnina is not the guy on the boat who strangled Roselli. What else? Roselli was also a friend of a Washington lobbyist named Fred Black. Fred Black was involved with Bobby Baker, which is a scandal that would have brought down LBJ had Kennedy not been assassinated. And Bobby Baker was in bed with some of the Lansky associates, some of these same associates who were backing LBJ in his political career. LBJ was getting dirty money all around. And Fred Black was also questioned by the FBI in the wake of the Roselli killing. I find it also intriguing that it came out in New Times Magazine that Roselli and Jack Ruby met together in Miami 1 month before the assassination.
That's fascinating. I never heard that one before.
It also came up.
Hey, did you hear the show with Gary Hill? The show with Gary Hill?
Oh, yeah, that was excellent, I thought.
Yeah, and I thought have
he
him
was
back.
Really good.
Well, I had to rein him in because he was getting too much into the weeds. This guy's got an encyclopedia of knowledge. But the stuff he was talking about, how all the witnesses to the Tippit shooting were all people associated with the Jack Ruby.
Well, not all of them, but at least a handful of them were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you almost get the impression, like, Ruby was calling around to people who saw him there that day and putting the fix in.
I mentioned some of that on a Lone Nutter group today. Or yesterday, rather.
Ted, it's funny because people will hear us talking about this stuff. And first we're talking about the JFK assassination, but then we're throwing names around like E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis. And they say, well, what do you mean? No, those are Watergate guys. But people don't realize that it's been like the same crew of guys that were going after Castro. They killed Che Guevara. And then even some of these guys later on were involved in Iran-Contra, these same type of characters. How is that?
With the involvement in the drug trafficking, the Kerry investigation, the Christic Institute lawsuit, which didn't come to a very good end. They totally got blown out of the water in that. But no, you're right.
And even I had on, like I said,
kept recurring.
Yeah, Frank Sturgis was involved in rigging the Billie Jean King Bobby Riggs tennis match, so he could gamble on that. These guys are just into everything with impunity.
Where did it say that he was involved in that?
His nephew told me.
He did?
Yeah.
I read about some other organized crime people being involved in that, maybe Trafficante, but really, Sturgis himself?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I know, it's crazy. Right? And Tosh Plumlee, he was involved in Iran-Contra coke dealing, right?
Yes.
As a pilot.
Yeah, he testified before, it may have been the Kerry Committee or maybe another committee or both. But yeah, he has letters of referral that show that he gave evidence about drug routes with knowledge of U.S. authorities.
That kind of brings us till today, because I know you want to talk about the election stuff too. Kind of brings us to today because here we had this pattern, this weave, this thread through history of assassinations against the Latin American socialist movements, and then the drug dealing, the assassination of President Kennedy, Iran-Contra. Bill Clinton involved with Mena, Arkansas, Iran-Contra, and then you have Barry Seal. Some people say he was a pilot on that day on the JFK assassination.
I don't believe that.
You don't believe that at all? Okay, no. But people say it. So, but then
that's Daniel Hopsicker. They say that.
He's the only one that says it.
He's the one who came up with it.
Oh, because he lived with Seal's
he didn't make
wife.
It up. He names the person he heard it from. I believe, but I just don't think it's a credible story. Okay.
Now, what do you call it? But so then we had the Clintons. He was involved, and Obama's comes out of the CIA. But here we have President Mr. Trump, who has a lot of these same kind of shady connections through Felix Sater and George Nader and Adnan Khashoggi and his connections to Epstein and Maxwell and all this kind of stuff. So he's in the mix as well, but not to that same degree. He's still kind of an outsider. Well, what do you make of it?
I don't know what to make of it because, you've got like a guy like Barr who's totally in the tank with Trump in every way. You see it more and more. And he goes back, way back. He goes back to his father goes back to Epstein.
Barr is CIA. Barr started out CIA.
CIA cover-ups and subsequently, and BCCI and so on. So he's always been Mr. Attorney General cover-up. So to that extent, why does Trump have deep state types like him around him if he's the outsider? On the other hand, just the other day he was talking about the generals being beholden to the defense contractors. And remember, we were warned about the military-industrial complex. I can't imagine too many presidents, remarking in that fashion the way he does.
Right, but what I find fascinating, we see from the tapes with Bob Woodward, okay, how he talks to people one-on-one and confides to them, hey, man, yeah, I know this is real serious, but then can go out on a stage. What he says in public is totally different from what he's doing behind the scenes.
With respect to what, the military?
Yeah. I don't believe he says the same thing about the military or the same thing about Bill Barr. Bill Barr, by the way, goes way back into Iran-Contra, too, and all the Mena, Arkansas drug smuggling. I talked to, Chip Tatum about it as soon as Bill Barr's name came up, and he says, oh, yeah, he's up to his neck, As you want to come on in, I don't have time.
If you look at Terry Reid's book, Bill Barr is an operative in the whole network using a fake name.
Yeah. It makes no sense. And we have
Trump is just he's just having it both ways the way I see it.
And we have Stone. Wait. Roger Stone, who's so intimate with Trump, who's up to his neck with those Castro Cubans down there. He has E. Howard Hunt's son, St. John Hunt, on the payroll.
Wait. Roger Stone is now employing St. John Hunt for what end? St.
John Hunt is his ghostwriter.
He collaborated on that one book.
No,
a lot of people. What?
No,
people tend to have divisions with Roger Stone once they get in bed with him.
Yeah, I've heard that. But my last conversation with St. John Hunt on this air was after Stone got arrested. So it was very recent, and he was very sad to see that. One of the few people sad to see Stone arrested. Everybody else seems to have falling out.
Well, I can see this. Stone is someone who normally has money if he doesn't have too many legal fees. Yeah. And St. John Hunt is probably someone in need of money, so it's a pretty good fit.
He definitely said he was rescued, by Roger Stone. That he really, gave him a big break in his life. And he's a good writer.
And I also know that Roger Stone understands people who have, let's say, substance abuse problems, and I've heard that about St. John, and I'm not faulting him in any way with my history.
I think it comes and goes, and I think he's I think he's doing good now.
What, he's doing good? Yeah, in that regard, I trust he is.
I would hope so. Yeah. And I've had my own issues there too, as well. So we're all grown men. But now, what do you
think? I'm so appalled at the way the election is going, and I want to bring up something else with you because I know you're a Christian and all that.
Yeah.
Well, have you heard about this controversy? We'll get back to the election, but first, can we talk a little bit about this series on Netflix called Cutie?
I have not seen it or heard it.
Well,
I'm hearing about it.
And in fact, I shouldn't comment on it without having seen it. And here I go again. But I'll do it anyway.
You know what? Let's not discuss it because I don't want to. Okay. If it is that kind of material, I don't want people with that kind of interest getting their jollies, off of my back.
Does that really happen when you're having a serious discussion about it? I mean, it's the
I know, but we talk about it, then they go looking for it.
It's the show that's titillating, and you've seen the clips from it. But I agree. Let's not talk about it. It doesn't pertain directly to the election anyway.
No, but my question about the election, because now we have a president of the United States openly, and Roger Stone saying, if you lose the election, you should seize power using the military. You should, flood the streets with your troops. Now, we've never had that before in my lifetime that I'm aware of. We're seeing.
So you're saying that Roger Stone advocated flooding the streets?
Yeah.
And saying that the election was stolen from Trump?
Yeah, and he told
what
Trump.
About what the Washington Post is editorializing? Did you read that?
No, what's that?
They said anything short of a Biden landslide, there would be continued violence. And I don't know if they were suggesting that's a good thing. At this point, it wouldn't surprise me if they were saying it is a good thing.
Well, no, wait. What is that theory?
But people on all sides are fear-mongering.
But the theory is that the street activists and the leftists are going to be so upset that Biden loses that they're going to lift an extra finger in support of Biden's cause to knock down the White House gates and walls to put Biden in office. You know what I mean? Nobody I know is going to lift a finger for Biden, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris, the two of them. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, Ted, but I just recently endorsed Trump for 2020. Did you know that?
What?
Did you know that I just endorsed Trump for 2020?
Oh no, I didn't know that. That's almost beyond the pale. I mean, I was a little disappointed when I heard Chris Hedges say he wouldn't vote for Biden, and I'll get to what I think of Biden and Harris. But no, I did not hear you did that, and I have to say I'm disappointed because there's nothing worse than 4 more years of Trump.
Under Trump, we have the greatest BLM movement in history, which has the potential of being a third party. Okay, we have more organized. Yes, we do. We have more organized street fighters in opposition to suppress it. We're taking ground. We're capturing land. We have them on the run. And I believe that it's accelerationism. We need. If Biden gets in, everyone goes back to sleep. Another 4 years of Trump, the other side gets more radical. We need to get these capitalists out of there from both parties. Neither one of them are doing any of us a favor. But go ahead. I'm interested in hearing what you want.
I don't believe in this thing of heightening the contradictions until you get, a total overthrow of the system. And we already see where that's getting us. I mean, it was for one thing when it was just windows being smashed and people losing their small businesses and so on. But now then people started ending up dead on both sides. And you are suggesting more of this? I was going to just get on Biden and Harris's case for being too tepid about denouncing it, but I see I really have an uphill argument on my hands.
Well, Dan and Ted, I have a lot of respect for you. You're my elder by many, many years. So I have to
listen. I got this young anarchist friend who thinks exactly like you do. I spent an hour arguing on the phone with him yesterday, but I'm not going either way or one way or the other on this. I'm firmly convinced with my convictions on this.
Okay, but now, do you want to see a capitalist system continue in this country?
No.
Okay.
I think the first thing we need to do is go after the wealth of these sickeningly wealthy people like Gates and Bezos, and worshiping Gates in the public square and saying he's going to save us from the virus. And did you hear Bezos he's worth so much money that because he divorced his wife, she's now the richest woman in the world at like $68 billion. First, we have to get rid of the excesses of capitalism. But no, I believe in socialism, but just how do we get there?
Yeah, and how do we get there where we're not burning ourselves down? Because we see what happened in Venezuela. Just the other day, they located a guy with a bunch of guns and money that was trying to destroy the refineries. He was down there to destroy the refineries. And even when
Venezuela?
they catch Yeah, and even when they catch a guy red-handed in the act, the plot goes through a few months later. You'll see a few months later the refineries will be destroyed, just like with the power grid down there. They caught those guys.
I don't know how that has relevance in this country. Guess what I heard last night?
No, I'll tell you what's relevant.
Some cops in Oregon are saying that Antifa is setting some of these fires. Now I don't believe that, but you know, this stuff is getting crazy and out of control, and it needs to be reined in. And I think it's really. It shouldn't even need to be said that these politicians have a duty to come out and for sensibility and to denounce mindlessness and so on.
Well, Ted, you know, we had a situation where never before in this country where we just had this nomination of Mr. Trump there at the White House, and his own guests couldn't get from the White House to their hotel rooms without being mobbed by people in the streets. Now, that's a pretty effective tool, man. When we have them on the run like that, we can't just say, well, we need to rein ourselves in. We're winning, man. We're making it.
I don't even know. What incident are you talking about?
Are you talking
when Rand Paul tried to leave
Rand Paul.
Congress?
Yeah, but the other ones, too. Not just Rand Paul. Everyone who left from the inauguration, not the inauguration, from the nomination, GOP convention, they ran out of the White House. Everyone had trouble getting back to their rooms.
But you can't think this viewpoint of yours is going to take hold with a lot of people. I mean, I don't have to tell you that what happened in the 60s with what the rioting that was going on in the streets at the time redounded to Nixon's benefit, and he won the election handily, and it was all on the law and order issue. And I don't think, you know, it's too hard to realize that the same thing could easily happen here.
Right, and Trump wins again, and we get more radicalized and we get pushed further to the left. We just had, with the George Floyd, we had moms, soccer moms. I was out in those marches, man. Everybody, people's signs on people's lawns, everybody wearing BLM. Now we were just crying and hugging our pearls, right? Clutching our pearls just a year ago over Colin Kaepernick. Didn't want to stand for the national anthem. And now we have totally captured NBA, NFL,
well, I
NHL.
was clutching my pearls, but I wasn't making this huge hero.
I'm not talking about
either.
You. I'm not talking about you.
I think the movement that happened around George Floyd was great.
Yeah.
It should have kept up in that manner, but it didn't. It deteriorated. And I don't know if it's because of provocateurs or it's just because these young people that don't know any better, they sure don't understand anarchism, I'm pretty sure. They sure don't understand history. And I'm not going to, you know, let them lead the way to just chaos and God knows what.
Well, the thing is, okay, when you have a situation, and a lot of it is instigated by the police. You know, these are generally, you know, I hate to use the word peaceful protests because I don't think the protests need to be peaceful. I have no problem with property damage during protests.
That's what my friend says.
We need to get them to stop. We need to get them to stop killing us. Okay, we've been asking nicely for years and years and years, and all they're doing is increasing their weaponization, increasing their militarization, their authority, and just even more blatantly killing us now. So we got to put a stop to that. One thing, okay, and we do. Yeah, and if you look at a report I did recently about lies and myths about BLM, I forget what the first part was.
Oh, I wondered what. Listen to that.
Yeah.
Who's your guest on that show?
No, it's a report I did talking to the people from the people in Las Vegas. They try to make it sound like there was a police shooting that came out of a Black Lives Matter protest, but it was an anti-Black Lives Matter guy who shot the cop there. And then they tried to make it sound like this innocent guy had his mother on the show that was miles and miles away that got shot by the cops minutes later, that somehow the two incidents were connected. And this guy was...
what city is this?
That's Las Vegas. All my people in Vegas.
Oh... Okay, I don't know what happened there.
And it's still being, I'll send you the link right after the show. And it's still being reported that these killings came out of a Black Lives Matter protest when it was the exact opposite. And then it was we don't have time to get into it now because we're totally out of time. Okay,
what about all these mega corporations throwing all this money at BLM? Does that bother you at all?
Yes, that does bother me. I'm very suspicious of that. That's not the BLM that I know. I know the street guys in BLM, and they're not getting any money. Okay, not a penny. So,
I can believe it.
Yeah, they're getting one dime. Ted Rubenstein.
The ones that lead BLM are self-proclaimed Marxists, and I hate to think that they're laughing and all the way to the bank, and because the suckers are pouring money to them in order to co-opt the movement.
Yeah, people shouldn't be throwing money through Act Blue and that kind of stuff like that. You can go down and to these rallies and these marches yourself and meet the people who are the pastors of these local churches, mostly, that are running these operations. You can meet them. They're not scary people at all. People you invite into your house. When you get in trouble, these are people you can go to for help. I can promise you that. When I moved my furniture from Vegas to here, it was Black Lives Matter guys who helped me move my furniture, okay? I have no problem with any of that stuff, but you just need to meet the real people. I've also seen some shady Facebook pages come up looking for donations and stuff like that. I've contacted these people. Hey, you want to do an interview?
No doubt.
And they're all shady as if. Anyway, Ted Rubenstein, my friend, I love you, brother. I thank you for all you've done for this show. You've taken me to a whole new level here. I respect your work. I should have you on more often. I've tried to give you a show, your own show, but you turn me down.
It's fun even when I disagree with you on serious topics.
Yeah.
Really.
I hear you, bro.
It's nice back and forth.
Thank you so much, my friend.
You too.
Good night.